So we've had a look at the belongs to relationship. Now what we're going to look at is the belongs to many relationship. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to go back to my database and I'm going to create a new table and I'm going to call this roles. So in here, what I'm going to say is I'm going to have a role name, varchar255, and we could also have things like role permissions, but obviously this is just a demonstration, so we're not going to get into that. So now let's actually create a couple of roles. We'll say administrator, and we'll also say moderator. Whoops. And that'll do for now. So we have a users table and we have our roles table, but at the minute we have no way to tell which users have which roles. So what we could do is we could add a user ID field here. And then we could say user1, so Terry is an administrator. But what if we want a user to have multiple roles? Well, then we're going to have to add another column, entry, called moderator. And then we're going to have to do user ID equals 1 again. But what happens when you want to change the name of a role? Well, then you're going to have to do a query to your roles table to find all roles with the name of moderator or administrator and then change that. And that's just a bit of a hassle. So what we're going to use instead is something called a pivot table. So a pivot table acts as kind of a bond between two, well, usually two, but there's sometimes more, two tables. So there's a naming convention for this. So if we look at the two tables that we're trying to create a bond for, it's roles and users. So what we do is we sort them alphabetically, so roles, users, and we separate them by an underscore. And then we make the table names singular. So we'll add that, and what this will have is a user ID and a role ID. So if we go back to our roles table, we'll see, let's get rid of that user ID field. We have an administrator and a moderator role. So let's give Terry an administrator role. So user ID equals 1 and role ID equals 1. Now let's also make him a moderator. Sounds a bit pointless, but there you go. So user ID equals 1 and role ID equals 2. So as well as displaying the country here, what I want to do is also display the user's roles. So here I'm going to say roles, and then, well, we need to set this up. So first things first, we need to create a new model for our roles table. Class role extends Eloquent. And then what we need to do is go to our users model and say public function roles. And we're going to return this belongs to many role. And again, we're going to reference that model, not the actual table name. So because Laravel is so clever, what it does is it gets the name of the model that you provided and the name of the model that you're calling it in. And using the naming convention we already discussed, it calculates the name of the pivot table. So that's all we need to worry about. But if you decided not to follow the naming convention for some reason, and you called the table something like users roles, what you could do is specify that table name as a second argument. But in this case, because we followed the naming convention, we don't have to worry about that. So in here, what I'm going to say is I'm going to add a for each loop, and I'm going to say user roles as role. And then what we're going to do is, let's put this in an unordered list. It's not going to look great, but it will work. So what we're going to say is Lee list item role name. So back in our browser, hit refresh, and there we go. We get our roles, administrator, and moderator. So just to make sure that this works exactly how we want it to, let's add another role. We'll call this editor. And then we'll give Terry the role of editor. Hit refresh, and there we have it. Terry now has the role of editor. So if we head over to Alex's profile, he doesn't have any roles at the minute. Let's try to give him an admin position. User ID equals 2, sorry. Hit refresh, and there we have it.